Welcome everybody to this edition of Attention Talk Video. I'm your host, ADHD and Attention Coach Jeff Copper, and I'm here today to pay attention to manufacturing content. Content is content. It's your perspective. You're saying what you want to communicate to other people. Content is a research paper. Content is an article. Content is a video. Content is audio. Content is it's all kinds of stuff. And I find many people with ADHD, they really struggle in the manufacturing of content. And over the years I've found is that there's certain variables that you should really take a look at and pay attention to because it can make the content generation a little bit easier. So let's start with the idea. First of all, you have an idea that you want to kind of communicate, and there's different things that you could do. You could go real factual, where you do research and you find out stuff and you kind of like, this is the stuff that's kind of going on. You walk them through it. You kind of prove your point, if you will. There's other times that's really, really overwhelming to many with ADHD because it requires a lot of research and a lot of executive functioning, trying to find patterns and trends and trying to outline that. Often when that happens, I find, well, you can share your experience. When you share your experience, it doesn't necessarily have to be factual according to data, but you're just sharing your experience. And after all, you're an expert on your experience. You might not be expert on some research or something like that, and you'd have to go dig that up and cite it, but your experience is your experience, and if it really is, you can talk from a very authentic place based off of that. I do a lot of that Attention Talk Video. Based on my experience, this is what I'm sharing with you. I've actually made many references before that. This isn't science. This is just my experience. These are my observations. So that's a way that it's an angle for which I share content. Now, my experience, I might be able to go get some research and back it up with that. But sometimes I just share my experience just to get it out there. So that's kind of the come from type place. Then there's the way you deliver it. That's really fascinating. There's the sermon approach where you just kind of dictate on high. I find personally is that it's a lot easier for me to deliver content if I'm being interviewed. Yes. It's very, very easy. I can give somebody like a list of a handful of maybe 10 questions and they interview me. They just ask me those questions, and my response to those questions, if I did it 10 times, I'd give you 10 different responses. But I'm paying attention to the same thing, and it enables me to kind of walk my way through to get the content out in a format. So I can write it as a sermon, if you will, or I could be interviewed. I like the interview process because it's easier for me. It's a little bit more impromptu, etc. Then there's the vehicle in which you communicate. It can be print, it can be audio, it can be video, it can be both, it can be all kinds of stuff. So I find, honestly, is for me, I like to share my experiences in an interview format in audio or video. I can manufacture that stuff relatively easy because I'm an expert on my experience. I like to be interviewed by people inquisitively asking questions, and I can respond in the moment. The thing that I like about audio and video is if somebody asks me a question, I can change my mind in mid-sentence and go in a different direction. Whereas in print, you can't do that. Also, when I'm being interviewed, I can look at the other person and I can pick up nonverbal communication, like does this make sense or not make sense? And I can change the track based off of how they're looking at me or the vibe in the room. It's much more relaxing and much easier for me. What's the point of all this stuff? Is that when you're developing content, what I've learned over the years is all too often people sit down and they pigeonhole themselves to, I need to be an expert on this and I need to write a paper on it and I've got to organize my thoughts. That can be punitive for people with ADHD. Sometimes it's simple as, I'm not going to write as an expert, I'm just going to share my experience because you got the data on that. You can do it in an interview format, or you can sit down and script it, or whatever you want, and you can do it by different mediums. Again, you can do it by audio, print, or video. I find audio and video much easier. Some people like print because it's kind of finalized. Really, what really makes the most sense is experiment around with that, particularly in this world of the internet and media and content generation. There's room for print, there's room for audio, there's room for video. And what's interesting is you have different audiences. My Attention Talk Radio, that's an audio audience. There are not a lot of them watching the video, but a lot of my video people aren't reading content. So it segments my audience, but the thing about it is, I'll tell you, it really helps me produce content a lot easier. One other tidbit I've learned over the years is when I'm speaking PowerPoints, the challenge for me is if it's real detailed, I actually have to put the stuff up and read like the really detailed stuff because I can't remember it. But if you ever see one of my presentations, often I have a picture on a presentation. And the picture reminds me to tell a story of my experience that I'm authentic with, that I can kind of share and been strung along in a certain kind of theme. So if you will, when I'm giving a presentation, I kind of simulate the interview process by having slides with pictures which are like a prompt or a question or something that I want to talk around, and I show those pictures, and it kind of leads me along a path to kind of make my point when I get to the end. And over the years I found it's a hell of a lot easier for me to manufacture content and presentations by just doing that way. At the end of the day, I hope this has given you pause to think that there are different angles, different ways, expert, my experience, or you can critique somebody else. Like this person said that's another way that you could do it. And again, you can do it by interacting with somebody, or on your own, and you got different ways of doing that. The trick really is to figure out which makes the most sense for those three and do it that way. I think that you'll find if you're trying to do something and you can identify the come from, the angle, you do it alone with somebody else, and if you do it by whatever media, it'll make it a lot easier for you to manufacture content. I hope you found this very insightful. For our listeners, I always do this wrong. Please hit the subscribe button here on the bottom. We send out a tip each week, just like this one. Please comment. I'm always interested in your thoughts on the videos. And with that, we hope you've enjoyed this edition of Attention Talk Video. Take care.